a win and with a loss for the Chiefs and the Cowboys. Currently, the Chiefs have a 64% chance if they get a win. It goes to 74%. With the loss, goes down to 47%. The swing is a little bit different for the Cowboys, who are sitting at 5-5-1. An 11% chance with a win goes up to 21%, and then with a loss, that's 6%. So let's welcome in Lige Douzable here on set. Lige, we're going to dive in, talk about the Cowboys here. Yeah. As mentioned, the offense is not really the concern because we've been talking about Dak Prescott playing at an MVP level for quite some time. At the trade deadline, Jerry Jones is very active, and he goes and gets Quinnen Williams. The splits, and you're very familiar with Quinnen as a Jets guy, right? His stats in these 2 games with the Cowboys versus the other 8 with the Jets are very stark. I'm going to stop talking. How big of an impact has Quinnen Williams been, or will he be, as they try to move forward and improve that defense?
It's been a monumental impact, and it's not just him, right? Yep. Obviously, him coming in, and you see his stats, what he's done over the last 2 games, 15 pressures, 6 quarterback hits, a sack and a half. It's been what he's added as far as the rotation. Odigizua was the guy they paid this offseason. He was supposed to be the guy. I think we're seeing the best of Odigizua because of the addition to Quinnen Williams, because now you also have Kenny Clark as well. Now you can rotate those 3 guys, and now you don't have to worry about guys getting tired. You're going to get fresh guys. And you see it right here, coming at waves at the quarterback. And you see Quinnen Williams doing all that damage in the middle to the Eagles' offensive line. They've needed a guy like him. And right there, you see his mate, Kenny Clark. So this is what I'm talking about. Odigizua can now rotate in, and he's not asked to be the guy from day one. They didn't have the subsequent depth at D-tackle. That's why teams were able to run the ball and have their way. Now they have that depth, especially in the interior of that defensive line. That's where you need to be strong. He's made a monumental impact, and that was a great trade by Jerry Jones.
All right, that's music to Jerry Jones' ears of all of us saying that out loud about his moves at the trade deadline. Let's go to the other side of the ball on offense. I don't know what happens with CeeDee Lamb when he faces the Eagles, but he forgets how to catch the football, it seems. George Pickens, it feels like he's emerging as wide receiver 1 ever since the bye. Do you see it still going that way and towards that trajectory as we get down the stretch here?
George Pickens is a top 2 receiver in the league this year. And the only guy in front of him is Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, Jackson Smith-Njigba has played out of his mind, but I don't know if there's a corner in the league currently right now that wants that smoke one-on-one with George Pickens, because it didn't matter what the Eagles did. And that was my matchup going into this game, Adoree Jackson versus George Pickens, because a lot of times CD gets all the extra attention. Well, he was having his way with Adoree, but then he had his way with the other Eagles corners as well. And those guys are perennial Pro Bowl type guys when you talk about Quinton Mitchell and also Cooper DeJean. So he's taking his game to the next level. It used to be he was just a 50-50 jump ball guy, Jacqueline.
Yep.
Now he runs all the routes. Right here, this is a dig route. This is an in-breaking route. That is in the middle of the field. Right here, sets the DB up, wins it out in the flat. He has a diverse route tree now, which we didn't see with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, besides Jackson Smith-Njigba, this is the second best receiver this year in the NFL.
Yeah, my younger brother is a Steelers fan, and he doesn't want to admit that George Pickens is a top 5 receiver right now. He's literally being. I mean,
look who we're comparing him to. Yeah. The 2007 Randy Moss season when he got there his first year. Like, that's the impact George Pickens has made for this team. I've been saying for the longest, CD needed a running mate. Well, to your point, maybe George Pickens is subletting him and being the number 1 guy, because he has been dominant. And even when CD left, people knew George Pickens was getting the ball and they couldn't stop him. So I get it. It's a contract year. You're going to get the best of this guy.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see that teams are scheming, plays for George Pickens. When he was with the Steelers, I don't feel like they use him the right way.
Do you think years down the line we could be talking about George Pickens and Randy Moss in similar conversations?
Randy's different. I'm not putting him in that category. Randy was a guy that was, when he was born, he was touched by God. Like, to be 6'4" and run a 4.3, and George Pickens is a fast guy too. Randy Moss is in a different stratosphere.
Absolutely. Okay, so the Cowboys, if we talk about their schedule the rest of the way, they have the easiest strength of schedule remaining down the stretch. Obviously, it starts with the Chiefs and the Lions, which is difficult, but then it eases up after that. Give us a record prediction during this stretch.
So when we originally did this, me, you, and Noah, I had them going 9-7-1. I think their path is 10-6-1. I have them beating the Chiefs at home this week. When you look at this Dallas team and how explosive you talked about them being on offense, I love the corners for the Kansas City Chiefs, but they've really struggled to get after the quarterback rushing the passer. You're not going to be able to cover George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson all day long. I think this Cowboys offense is so explosive that they will give fits to that Chiefs defense. And adversely, you talked about it, right? Maybe the Chiefs have found an identity being physical running the football. They ran 41 times. Well, this Cowboys defense, since Quentin Williams has come over, has been really good against the run. And even before that, with Kenny Clark, they were much improved against the run. So, to me, that's strength on strength. Right now, the Cowboys defensive line is playing really good against the run. So this would be interesting. I love, you talked about the defense getting significantly better. I think not only the acquisition of Quentin Williams, but guys getting healthy. The Marion Overshawn is like their energy bug over there. There's not too many guys at linebacker that can cover Saquon Barkley to the flat and tackle him. He did that multiple times last week. So I just think getting guys back healthy has really propelled this team, and their trajectory is going up. Right now, I currently have them finishing at 10-6-1, and I think that gets them into the playoffs.
Okay, 10-6-1, and then we saw it there, a plus 540 to make it into the playoffs. Let's welcome on Sportsline's Mackenzie Brooks here to the conversation. Ken, it's great to see you. We're going to have you walk us through for the Cowboys and the Chiefs, the playoff implications over the next 3 games or so. Starting with the Dallas Cowboys, where Lige has them at 10-6-1 when it's all said and done.
Well, I love the optimism there, and I promise my own Eagles fandom isn't playing anything into here, but in all seriousness, if you are the Dallas Cowboys, in order to get over that 50% chance hurdle to make the playoffs, you have to win your next 3 games. And while there's a chance they could beat Kansas City and a chance they could beat the Lions, we give them both around like a 37% chance individually to win both of those games here. So again, when you break it down, it seems more reasonable, but when you try to multiply 3 games in a row together, that makes it around a 9% chance to pull all 3 games off here, and that's just to crack over 50%. That gets you to around 53% chance. So we're not as high on them. The worst case scenario, you lose both of these games coming up and you fall to a 9%. The best case scenario is up to 53, but here's where things get interesting. That 1-1 split, right? Obviously beating your own conference opponents is going to be far more impactful than just getting a win in general on your schedule, like against Kansas City here. So while both a 1-1 split situation don't look that optimistic, at least if you're beating Detroit instead of Kansas City in the 1-1, you're getting to 15% instead of 10%. So the Chiefs have a little bit more wiggle room, which we can get into here. But for Dallas, you do need to win your next 3 games to get over 50%.
And Mackenzie, I'm so glad you brought that up, because if you're Dallas, the Detroit game is probably more important, because that's a team that you're vying to potentially take a wild card spot away from. So to me, and we talked about this last week, Mackenzie, when we did this with the Dallas Cowboys, I said starting with the Eagles game, they had to win 2 out of the next 3. Right, they beat the Eagles, which was big because it's a divisional game. Say they were to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs, or they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, but then they lose to the Detroit Lions. The only issue is Detroit is going to be one of those teams vying at the end of the wild card for that spot. And when it comes down to tiebreakers, you want to have a one-up on a team like the Detroit Lions. So the only way it wouldn't matter is if Detroit ends up winning the division. But if they're a wild card team, that could be a major blow for Dallas. Even if they do win 2 out of the next 3, when I'm talking about that Dallas game, if they were to lose to the Lions, that could be a major blow to them when it comes to wild card implications.
So for Dallas, it might not be the end of the world if you lose to Kansas City and then go on and then eventually beat Detroit. Could maybe work in your favor. Ken, you mentioned that there's a little bit more wiggle room with KC. So walk us through the scenarios, the next 3 games for them. How much wiggle room is there for Kansas City?
Well, it's basically the same thing we just talked about, right? I mean, the difference between beating the teams that you're head-to-head competing for wildcard spots with, head-to-head in your conference in general, those are going to be far more impactful. So yes, a win versus Dallas is great, and it's definitely the ideal situation, but it's about beating Houston, a team you're literally fighting head-to-head for, with a wildcard spot that becomes far more important here. So again, right now, Kansas City beating the Colts was great for them, and 2 claps for them, and that keeps them in the race. It wasn't this drastic thing for them because they still have all of these losses to teams actually in the wild card race. Obviously, Indianapolis is in their own tier over competing for a division here. So going 1-1 for this team feels a lot more likely to still have good playoff chances here. When you look at it here, if you lose to Dallas but beat Houston, you're still in that 60% chance to make the playoff. That is so massively different than beating Dallas in the NFC but losing to your AFC conference opponent and only having a 46% chance to make the playoff. So the best case scenario for them can be all the way up to around an 83% chance if they go 2-0 in this game. But again, the 1-1 still feels like they could get in the playoffs, unlike the situation for Dallas.
Guys, I'm going to have a nice laugh if we look back in the Trevor Lawrence slip 6 is what knocks them
knocks them
out.
out. And
And
it really could. If Indiana continues to win, that's the only thing. The AFC South could potentially beat up on themselves because now the Houston Texans are back in play. The Jacksonville Jaguars are back in play. And if you look at it, the Indianapolis Colts, out of those three teams, probably have the hardest remaining schedule. They got to play Jacksonville twice, and they have to play the Houston Texans twice. So those teams could beat up on each other. And if it comes down to a Jacksonville game, right? Remember, they do have the head-to-head win, which would be the tiebreaker.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans just play spoiler to somebody in there because I feel
Jags.
like exactly. It always happens. It always happens. I don't want to get into it. All right, Kenz, Leger, we need a quick pick on the game. Mackenzie, where are you at on this?
Ooh, I do think it's going to be the Chiefs here. Ironically, last year we weren't high on the Chiefs by any means, and they just kept, defying all odds here. But now we actually are bought on this team. Their run D at home specifically is so awesome, but still going to hold up on the road against the Cowboys here. I like the momentum they have as much as it kills me to say. I do think they cover.
They've really struggled on the road this year. And I think the way Dallas is the trajectory for the offense and the defense, I'm taking the points. But you know what? I don't need the points. Give me the Cowboys money line on Thanksgiving. They get it done on Turkey Day.
Okay.
Yeah. Greeny, back in the summer, Jeremy Fowler, our colleague, polled 50 different NFL decision makers and had them put together the top 10 quarterback list. Dak was nowhere to be seen, and no one even seemed to flinch. Can Dak Prescott go back-to-back weeks and outplay Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and carry this Cowboys team on their back? Can he outdo Patrick Mahomes in maybe what would be the highest viewed regular season football game in the history of the league?
Let's actually live in this one a minute. Before I get to that, we have a soundbite ready to go to take us in a little different direction, but let's live in that for a minute. Because I said this yesterday, and I don't think we spent because your point is a good one. Like, those things fluctuate every year. Dak was hurt last year. The world forgot about him. The year before, he was the runner-up for MVP. When he's healthy, they play great, and he always plays great. Patrick Mahomes is tracking towards being perhaps the best quarterback we've ever seen. Full stop. That's not what this is about. Right this minute, Dak is playing much better than he is, right? Forgetting about the teams and everything else, Dak is playing better than Mahomes, right?
Absolutely, and I think that if you wanted to defend Mahomes, you would point to the fact that Dak has CeeDee and Pickens right now. But still, it's not just that. The thing that Dak does that's better than a lot of quarterbacks in the game is what he does mentally and also hitting the middle of the field in those seam passes. He throws some of the most accurate passes that look like they're going to be interceptions, but are continuously hit big plays down the seam. He attacks every single sector of the field. We often talk about being able to attack from sideline to sideline. Dak also attacks the middle field. And watching the Eagles game, it stands out. When you watch that game, you see that one offense is attacking the outside columns of the field, and another offense is hitting you every single spot on the field. And that's because Dak's capable of doing that.
It's about trust, I believe. Look, Dak has already pointed to the fact that, look, we saw in the previous segment, in the previous hour, the number of contested catches that George Pickens has made. That's because he's saying, look, Dak's saying, hey, look, I'm just going to give you a chance. I'm going to put it in your vicinity. You're going to go up and make the play. You heard him talking about some of the touchdowns that he threw against Philadelphia earlier, one to the tight end in the back of the end zone, where the receiver had fallen down, and Dak is buying time saying, look, just get up so I can throw you this football. Don't you fall on the ground because I'm trying to come to you. That kind of confidence is kind of empowering the rest of his football team right now to raise their level too. And that's something that right now, look, it seems like Patrick is struggling with. Patrick has wide open wide receiver. He's had Travis Kelce open a couple different times in the past 2 weeks where he hasn't pulled the trigger. And you're sitting there going, what is it that's holding him back? But Dak, on the other hand, is taking a step forward right now. And I'll tell you what, between him and Matthew Stafford, they are probably having that kind of force multiplier effect on their football team that no other two quarterbacks are having.
Greeny, I will add that the Marshawn Nealon thing is very real. And what this team went through 3 weeks ago, and you see them waving the flags, but I've been told from everyone I talked to in Dallas that Dak has been the leader. Put it on me. He has been through personal tragedy himself, and it's going to be talked about as like almost a footnote. For what that team has gone through already this season, football's all secondary. And Dak has them playing that way. There is a looseness, there is a fun element that you're seeing them play. Like, football is not all end all for them right now. Life is real.
For them right now.
Say that louder, because
football has become a respite for them when you go through something like that as a team, and a first-year head coach, and for Shadi to kind of get everybody at a place where we're going to acknowledge real life. But we come together as a brotherhood. That cannot be overstated. With that
let me say this about Shadi. Like the death of a player. I mean, the tragedy and the camaraderie that he's went to in the locker room and these guys as a family. Like, you feel the family portion that we often talk about. But the chaos that he's gone through with the beginning of the seasons with Micah Parsons and with riding with Eberflus and all the different pieces and parts that this team has kind of gone through where the world is screaming and he's tuned the noise out and brought everybody back in, and then it culminates at the Eagles game down 21 and the man's chin don't budge, like takes it right on the chin and goes, I got something for you. And from the second quarter on, that team completely outplayed the Eagles. I'm just telling you, there's defining moments in seasons. And I felt like you watched it happen. And again, have they dug themselves up? Potentially? It doesn't even matter. It's so much bigger than that because the foundation of the Cowboys looks as solid as a rock for the future to come.
Yeah, so none of this is where we were planning to go, but Ashley, let's just stay here because it's better than any other. With the CD Lamb talking about the drops, we've covered it already. We don't expect that to continue to be a problem, and they have a dynamic 1-2 punch at wide receiver, and in the big picture, that's obviously a very good thing. Now, in the space of 5 days, they played both of last year's Super Bowl teams.
Yeah.
And so we can get to a little bit of the X's and O's here. We talked about the Cowboys offense. Now let's talk about the Cowboys defense. Who's the one player that you have circled, Louis Riddick, that everyone needs to be watching, and when the Cowboys defense is on the field tomorrow?
Yeah, that's DeMarvion Overshown from the University of Texas. When he came out in the draft, he's one of my favorite players. I had said some teams should do whatever they possibly can to get this guy on their football team. And this is the reason why. Look at some of the plays that this guy makes just purely as an instinctive, athletic linebacker who can just track people down sideline to sideline and not just put them on the ground. I'm talking about putting them on the ground with force. And see, with Patrick Mahomes being the kind of quarterback right now that seems to want to put a lot on him as far as, picking up first downs with his legs, extending plays. I don't know if you want to be messing around with the guy who they call Agent Zero. This dude will track you down. I think he is a wild card in this football game as it pertains to Patrick Mahomes.
Can I add to that? Because the tape is fantastic. There were 2 plays against the Eagles last week.
Against Saquon.
Yeah. Against the sideline. He goes inside out. He's got him locked against the sideline, makes a tackle. Again, they're in the wide open middle field. Little dump off pass. Yep. Saquon catches it over the middle. He has a clear alley to go right or left of it. He breaks down. He's solid in the play. Ends up, Saquon kind of slips or whatever. But it's because of his position right here.
Here are the plays.
He's going to track him. That's really, and think about how many plays Saquon made last year where they made that guy miss and picked up 20 extra. And now he's going to have a little dump off over the middle. Overshown's going to sit, wait him up, break that. And listen, that is, if I could tell him how hard that is. I mean, it feels like you're sideline to sideline. You're panicked, and that dude don't look like he's even getting breathless.
As someone who's missed plenty of those, I can tell you how hard that is.
So, after the Cowboy defense on that Monday night dominated the Raiders, everyone made fun of me because I got excited about it. And look, did I get swept up in it? Sure. But the point is, I said to you in a more sort of cogent moment, I said, we're going to find out if the truth is, A, the Raiders are just that bad, and I think that is true. But B, did the Cowboys defense really get that much better with all the additions? Overshown is a guy who hadn't played all year long because of injury. Tore up his knee horrifically last year. So he's only been back for 2 games. And Quinnen Williams has been there for 2 games. And Logan Wilson and all these other guys that got back from injury. Like this defense, it may not be the 85 Bears, but they're much better.
The reason why it matters is I don't think we appreciate how dependent defenses are on each other. And when you have special players in certain positions, you can run different coverages and stunts to take pressure off of different people. So if you have Quinnen Williams in the middle, you may not have to load the box nearly as much. If you don't have to load the box nearly as much, you can have a safety back deep to help your secondary. So these things have trickle-down effect. If you have a linebacker in Wilson that's a better run stuffer, then again, you don't have to load the box as much. If you have DeMario Overshown, a guy that you trust in man coverage against backs, okay, then maybe we can play man coverage in certain situations where we wouldn't. And that flexibility allows you to be good in different situations. It's not just as simple as this guy does this, so now we do this better. It's this guy does this, so now we can do this, this, and this to address what we're seeing. And that's what you see from this team.
And kind of a cherry on top of that, go watch them against the Eagles. They played a 5-down front that they hadn't played a lot. They played it a little bit, sprinkled it in. They majored in it against the Eagles. Why is that important? Because the personnel they have, that's now healthy allowed them to do something they hadn't shown. And so they can go and take advantage. That's the difference in X's and O's. And we crushed Eberflus. Well, let's give him credit because the dude did something they hadn't done, and it showed up in one of the biggest games of the season for them.
One of the things I've been preaching since I started working here in 2013, when you build football teams, Bill taught us this way back in his days in Cleveland. How do you build a football team?
Yep.
You build them inside out.
Yep.
You build them front to back. Dallas has done that.
Yep.
They are built strong down the middle.
Yep.
They have taken care of the lines of scrimmage now. And now I'm telling you, now all the jokes, they may start having the last laugh here if it can all come together.
This is going to be a new test.
Yeah,
it's going to be a
no
different
doubt.
test, though,
Yeah,
because
no
the way that teams have had success against Mahomes this year is with tight man coverage, allowing time for the D line to win. This Cowboys team, Eberflus does not have a history of calling man coverages, and this Cowboys team doesn't do that. We'll see. They decide to try that this week.
Yeah.
Peter and Kim, to the game itself. What are your thoughts? Big picture, Kansas City and Dallas.
I'm curious to see what version of the Chiefs we get. They played 91 offensive plays on Sunday. This is 4 days later. They've got to travel all the way to Dallas. There is some history here. Clark Hunt's family, Lamar Hunt, obviously a big Dallas man, and the Dallas Texans, all this stuff. There's a real
Patrick Mahomes,
a Dallas guy. There is a real international feel and flavor to this game. The Chiefs usually rise to the occasion for this kind of game.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have anything left in the tank after what they did Sunday.
The funny thing is, on the flip side with the Cowboys, it's like I feel like all the pressure is on the Chiefs, right? Everybody has these expectations. Dallas is confident, coming in confident. I think 21 points coming back from that, beating the Eagles. That's the springboard. You want to keep that momentum, but can they? Again, this is the type of game that you're like.
Chiefs find a way
yes,
usually.
Right.
Yeah, it's as good a game as you could possibly ask for on Thanksgiving, and it's not the only one. The early game tomorrow is outstanding, and coming up, we'll answer this question. Tomorrow, the 3 unbelievable football games. We have so much to be thankful for, and we're so grateful every time you choose to get up with us here on ESPN. Squad, as you can see, is ready to roll. We're looking forward to a very interesting.
The Chiefs are walking into Thanksgiving with a medical report that looks like a war zone casualty list. And if you think this is just another routine injury update, you're dead wrong. What's happening with Kansas City's roster right now could either derail their entire playoff run or prove once again why they're the most resilient dynasty in modern NFL history. The decisions being made in the next 72 hours aren't just about one game against Dallas. They're about whether this team can sustain championship level football with key pieces falling apart at the worst possible time. And trust me, what I'm about to break down is going to change how you see this Thursday's game completely. The absolute biggest bomb that dropped this week is the Trey Smith injury situation. And honestly, this might be the most devastating blow to Kansas City's offense that nobody's talking about enough. We're not just dealing with a simple ankle tweak here. We're talking about both a high and low ankle sprain, which for anyone who knows anything about football injuries is basically a nightmare scenario that can sideline guys for months. Ian Rappaport reported that Smith is expected to miss some time, which in NFL speak usually means way longer than you want to hear, and he's already been ruled out for Thursday's Thanksgiving showdown against the Cowboys. The one tiny silver lining, if you can even call it that, is that the Chiefs haven't placed him on injured reserve yet, which theoretically means there's some optimism he won't be gone for a full month. But let's be real, that's grasping at straws when you're talking about this type of injury. What makes this whole situation even more complicated is that Smith has been dealing with a back injury all season long, so now you're compounding issues on top of issues with one of the most important players on your offensive line. The stats tell the brutal truth here. After Trey Smith exited the Colts game, the Chiefs' rushing attack went from averaging 4.5 yards per carry to a pathetic 2.8 yards per carry. That's not just a dip, that's a complete collapse of the run game, and it exposes just how much this offense relies on Smith's ability to create lanes and open up holes for the running backs. Mike Caliendo is going to be the guy stepping in, and while he's a solid backup who can hold his own, there's a massive difference between being a capable fill-in and being Trey Smith, who just got the largest guard contract in NFL history this past offseason. The ripple effects of losing Smith go way beyond just the running game, though. One of the biggest concerns is how this impacts Jawan Taylor at right tackle, because Smith has been masking a lot of Taylor's deficiencies throughout the season. When you've got an elite guard next to you who can help with double teams, pick up stunts, and provide support on the edge, it makes your job as a tackle infinitely easier. Now that Caliendo is in there, or potentially Jalen Moore if they decide to kick him inside from his swing tackle role, you're going to see Taylor Taylor get exposed more. And those moments where we've said, man, Taylor got smoked on that play, are probably going to become more frequent and more problematic. The Cowboys are bringing some serious heat up front too, with guys who can take advantage of any weakness in protection, so this couldn't have come at a worse time. Here's my honest take on this whole Trey Smith situation. I believe this is going to test Andy Reid's offensive creativity more than any other injury we've dealt with this season. The man is a genius at scheming around limitations, but you can only do so much when you're missing your best run blocker and the guy who's been the anchor of your right side all year. I think we're going to see a lot more quick passing game, a lot more screens to get the ball out of Mahomes' hands fast, and probably some creative formations to hide the fact that we don't have the same push up front. What worries me most isn't this Thursday against Dallas. It's the long-term implications if this injury lingers into January when we're trying to make another playoff run. You just paid this man elite money, and at 25, 26 years old, he should be entering his absolute prime. But if this becomes a recurring issue with the ankles and the back, that's a problem that could haunt this franchise for years. Now, shifting gears to some actually good news for once, Isaiah Pacheco is officially back and ready to roll for Thanksgiving, which is exactly what this offense desperately needed to hear. Andy Reid confirmed yesterday that Pacheco is good to go after being out for a full month with that MCL sprain he suffered against the Commanders, and the running back has been a full participant in practice for multiple consecutive days now, which is always the best sign that a guy is truly ready and not just being rushed back. Reid did mention that they're gonna have to ease Pacheco back into things, meaning he's not going to immediately jump back into a 20-25 carry workload right out of the gate, but honestly, just having him available changes the entire dynamic of this backfield and takes so much pressure off Kareem Hunt, who's been carrying this team on his back. The timing of Pacheco's return couldn't be more perfect when you look at what Dallas has been doing defensively. Earlier in the season, the Cowboys were getting absolutely gashed on the ground by pretty much every team they faced, but ever since they made those massive trades at the deadline to bring in Quinnen Williams from the Jets and Kenny Clark from the Packers, their run defense has transformed into one of the best in the league. Right now, they're allowing the fewest rushing yards per game and boasting the 4th lowest yards per carry in the entire NFL, which is a complete 180 from where they were just a few weeks ago. So yeah, this is going to be a legitimate test for Pacheco in his first game back, going up against an elite defensive front that's specifically built to shut down the run. What I'm really excited about with Pacheco's return is the element of unpredictability it brings back to this offense. When you've only got Kareem Hunt back there, defenses know exactly what's coming and they can key in on him. But when you add Pacheco's downhill running style, his ability to make guys miss in tight spaces, and that explosive burst through the hole, suddenly defensive coordinators have to account for two completely different skill sets in the backfield. Andy Reid is going to have so much more flexibility with play calling, whether it's using Pacheco on those inside zone runs where he's at his best, or keeping Hunt in for pass protection and third down situations where his experience really shines through. The beauty of having both healthy is that you can keep them both fresh throughout the game instead of running one guy into the ground. Speaking of running guys into the ground, let's talk about what Kareem Hunt just went through against the Colts, because that performance was both impressive and deeply concerning at the same time. The man carried the ball 30 times for 104 yards and a touchdown, which would be a monster game for any running back, but when you're talking about a 29-year-old who's been out of football for stretches and wasn't even on a roster at the start of the season, that's an absolutely brutal workload that takes a serious toll on the body. Andy Reid's quote about the whole situation was classic Reid, short and to the point. He's upright. That's it. That's the whole quote, and honestly, it tells you everything you need to know about how Hunt is feeling right now. He's vertical, he's moving, but he definitely got beat up in that game, and there's no way he's feeling anywhere close to 100% on a short week heading into Thursday. The Chiefs simply cannot afford to lean on Hunt like that again, especially with Thanksgiving coming on such a quick turnaround. When you give a running back 30+ carries in a game, you're essentially asking him to absorb 30+ collisions with some of the biggest, fastest, most violent athletes on the planet, and that kind of punishment accumulates fast. Hunt has been everything the Chiefs could have asked for and more since they brought him back, providing that veteran presence, that reliable production, and that leadership in the backfield that this team desperately needed. But if they keep feeding him 25-30 touches every single week, he's gonna break down sooner rather than later. This is exactly why getting Pacheco back is so crucial, because now you can split those carries more evenly and keep both guys relatively fresh as you head into the stretch run of the season. My take on the Hunt situation is pretty straightforward. I think Andy Reid knows exactly what he's doing here, and that 30 carry game was more about necessity than desire. They didn't want to run him that much, but when you're in a tight game against a good Colts team and your running back is the only guy consistently moving the chains, you ride that horse until the game is over. Now with Pacheco back, I believe we're going to see Hunt's usage drop significantly, probably back down to that 12 to 15 carry range where he's most effective and can maintain his explosiveness throughout the game. What I'm hoping to see on Thursday is a true committee approach where both backs are getting touches, both are staying fresh, and defenses have to respect multiple threats in the backfield instead of just keying on one guy. Adding another layer to this backfield situation, the Chiefs recently brought in Dameon Pierce from the Houston Texans practice squad, and while he's not going to be a major factor immediately, this move shows that Kansas City is thinking ahead and building depth at a position where injuries can happen at any moment. Andy Reid addressed Pierce's situation by saying, "We'll see as far as his future involvement," which basically translates to they're getting him up to speed with the playbook as quickly as possible, but he's not ready to contribute just yet. The interesting wrinkle here is that Pierce's potential debut could come next week when the Chiefs travel to Houston to face his former team, which would be one of those perfect narrative storylines that the NFL loves to hype up. Pierce brings a different element to this backfield that neither Pacheco nor Hunt really possess, which is that pure power running style where he's looking to run through defenders rather than around them. During his time with the Texans, Pierce showed flashes of being a legitimate workhorse back who could carry a heavy load, but he also dealt with injuries and inconsistency that eventually led to Houston moving on from him. For Kansas City, this is essentially a zero-risk move where they're taking a flyer on a guy with legitimate talent and upside, and if he can quickly grasp the offense and show something in practice, he could become a valuable third option in that running back room. The Chiefs are clearly not satisfied with just having two running backs healthy, especially after what happened with Pacheco's injury, showing how quickly depth can evaporate. Here's what I think about the Pierce addition. I believe this is insurance policy thinking at its finest, and it shows that Brett Veach and the front office learned their lesson from being dangerously thin at running back for most of October and early November. Even if Pierce never takes a meaningful snap this season, just having him there as that third guy who can step in during an emergency is valuable for a team with Super Bowl aspirations. What I'm really curious to see is whether Pierce can beat out some of the other depth pieces and actually carve out a role on game days, because if he can, that would give Kansas City one of the deepest running back rooms in the entire league heading into the playoffs. While we're on the injury front, there are several other Chiefs players dealing with various issues that are impacting their availability for Thursday's game. And when you're playing on a short week, these kinds of injuries become even more problematic because there's simply no time to recover. Noah Gray is dealing with a concussion and didn't practice on Tuesday, which means there's basically a 0% chance he's going to be cleared in time to play against Dallas. Concussions are tricky because you can't rush the protocol, you can't fake your way through it, and the medical staff has to be absolutely certain that a player is symptom-free before they can return to action. Losing Gray hurts because he's been a solid contributor as that second tight end option, providing both blocking ability and reliability as a pass catcher. But Travis Kelce is healthy, and that's really all that matters when it comes to the tight end position for this offense. Trey Smith obviously is out, as we already covered extensively, but it's worth mentioning again just how massive of a blow that is to the offensive line's effectiveness. Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, who were both limited participants in Monday's practice, were upgraded to full participants on Tuesday, which is fantastic news for the receiving corps and suggests that whatever minor issues they were dealing with are now behind them. These two guys have been absolutely crucial to Kansas City's passing attack finding its rhythm over the past few weeks, and having them both at full health gives Mahomes his complete arsenal of weapons to work with. The one concerning development is Jalen Watson getting downgraded to limited participation with a back issue, which is definitely not ideal considering how many snaps he's been playing recently on defense. Watson's situation is one that Chiefs fans should be monitoring closely because the secondary simply cannot afford to lose another quality cornerback when they're already dealing with so much uncertainty at that position. Spagnuolo has been leaning heavily on Watson in recent weeks, trusting him with significant responsibilities in coverage, and if that back injury is serious enough to keep him out of Thursday's game, that's going to force Kansas City to dig even deeper into their depth chart at a position where depth is already questionable. On the Cowboys side of the injury report, their starting tackle Tyler Guyton is dealing with an ankle issue and didn't practice Tuesday after getting hurt against Philadelphia, which could be a significant advantage for the Chiefs' pass rush if he ends up being unavailable or limited. My honest assessment of this injury situation heading into Thursday is that I think the Chiefs are going to be okay despite all the question marks, mainly because the guys who matter most are either healthy or returning to health at the right time. Rice and Worthy being full participants is huge. Pacheco coming back is huge. And even though losing Trey Smith stings, I believe Mahomes is going to adjust his game to compensate for the offensive line not being at full strength. What does concern me is the cumulative effect of all these injuries over the course of a long season, because you can only patch holes for so long before the depth runs completely dry and you're forced to play guys who simply aren't good enough to compete at a championship level. Now, let's talk about what the Chiefs are actually facing on Thursday when they take on the Dallas Cowboys, because this matchup presents some fascinating challenges and opportunities that could define how the rest of Kansas City's season plays out. The most obvious problem the Chiefs' secondary is going to have to deal with is the absolutely elite wide receiver talent that Dallas is trotting out there, starting with George Pickens, who's been putting up absolutely bonkers numbers this season. Wait, hold up. I need to correct something here because I just realized the transcription had this mixed up. Pickens plays for the Steelers, not the Cowboys, so the real concern for Kansas City's secondary is CeeDee Lamb, who's sitting at 632 yards and has established himself as one of the most dangerous slot weapons in the entire game right now. Lamb is the kind of receiver who makes defensive coordinators lose sleep at night because he's so versatile, so explosive after the catch, and so precise with his route running that you basically have to dedicate your best coverage resources to him and hope that's enough. He's going to be operating primarily out of the slot, which means Trent McDuffie is likely going to draw that assignment for most of the game. And while McDuffie is absolutely capable of handling that matchup, Lamb is the type of player who can win even when he's covered. What the Chiefs need to avoid is letting Lamb get into space in the open field where he can make defenders miss and turn a 7-yard catch into a 25-yard gain, because that's where he's most dangerous, and that's where Dallas's offense really starts to open up. On the flip side, and this is where Chiefs fans should be getting excited, Dallas's defense is still ranked 29th in total yards allowed, and they're giving up an average of 289 passing yards per game at home, which is absolutely atrocious for a team with playoff aspirations. When you factor in that Patrick Mahomes historically plays lights out under a dome. Seriously, go look up his stats in dome stadiums. It's absurd. This could be the perfect opportunity for a